Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
I remember that evening like it was yesterday. The soft glow of the sinking sun, the rhythmic crash of the waves against the shore, and the air thick with both salt and tension. I, Rebecca, stood on the weathered wooden deck of Monroe Beach Resort, a place I built with grit, sweat, and a stubborn refusal to take no for an answer. Every building on this stretch of paradise proudly bore my name, a silent declaration of my triumph over every obstacle thrown in my way. That night, my husband Marcus and I had invited the extended family for what was meant to be a peaceful gathering, a moment to celebrate life, success, and togetherness. But not all in our family shared my view of unity. As we mingled near the outdoor fire pit, laughter mingling with the evening breeze, Beatrice, Marcus's mother, a woman who carried herself with an air of entitlement, rose from her seat. In a voice that cut through the murmur of conversation, she announced, "This house is for real family only." Her tone dripped with disdain, as though my presence here was an unwelcome stain on our family legacy. I watched in silence as the words rippled across the gathering. Marcus, ever the peacemaker, yet seemingly bound by old loyalties, turned to me and, with a chilling nonchalance, said, "Honey, just go home." In that moment, time slowed to a crawl. I felt the sting of betrayal, but I also recognized a long-anticipated opportunity. Before I could process the shock that turned my blood cold, I picked up my phone and dialed security. "Please escort them out of my resort," I said calmly, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. A smile that spoke of plans unfolding exactly as I'd envisioned. Let me pause here for a moment and ask you, dear listener, have you ever been so deeply hurt by those you trusted that you felt compelled to reclaim what was rightfully yours? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share your stories and reactions in the comments below. The air shifted suddenly. The gentle hum of the ocean now underscored the brewing storm of emotions. Guests exchanged bewildered glances, and the staff, loyal, silent witnesses of my journey, appeared poised for the drama that was about to unfold. I wasn't merely standing up for myself. I was reclaiming the very soul of my creation. As security moved swiftly through the crowd, Beatrice's confident stride faltered, her face a canvas of shock and disbelief. Marcus, caught between the old and the new, seemed to shrink into himself, the conflict between filial duty and marital love etched in every line of his face. That night, as darkness settled over Monroe Beach Resort, the stage was set for a confrontation that would forever alter the meaning of family for us all. Little did they know, every moment of this evening had been building toward a revelation that not only affirmed my authority over this sanctuary, but also promised a reckoning for those who dared question who truly belonged here. And so, with the stars beginning to prick the night sky, the spark of that fateful moment ignited a blaze that none of us could have foreseen. As I walked along the moonlit beach the night after the confrontation, memories surged like the tide, reminders of the battles I'd fought long before this very day. Every grain of sand beneath my feet was a testament to years of struggle, sacrifice, and defiance. I wasn't always the formidable owner of Monroe Beach Resort. I was once the underdog, an outsider in a world that defined real family with a narrow, unforgiving lens. I remember a time when my dreams were met with skepticism. Friends and even those I trusted dismissed my ambitions, telling me that a woman like me couldn't possibly thrive in a realm reserved for old money and long-standing traditions. But I fought back with every ounce of determination I possessed. Every setback fueled my resolve, and every rejection became a stepping stone to the success I now relished. It wasn't just a resort I had built. It was my sanctuary, a monument to resilience and self-worth. The path was strewn with obstacles. A persistent barrage of condescension, whispered insults, and cold stares from those who believed I was an interloper. And yet, I persevered, fueled by the promise of a future where respect wasn't dictated by birthright. The very name Monroe had become synonymous with defiance and triumph. Etched on every building, a daily reminder to everyone that I was the one in control. That fateful day at the resort wasn't an isolated moment of rebellion. It was the culmination of decades of quiet battles. Each slight I endured, every dismissive remark that cut deep, had built up to this explosive declaration of power. My heart still burned with the embers of past wounds, each one a silent witness to the resilience that had brought me here. In the midst of this reverie, I recalled Marcus's conflicted gaze that night, a look that revealed how deeply the old ways had seeped into him, shackling him to traditions he neither fully understood nor desired. His loyalty to his mother, Beatrice, was a painful reminder that some family ties are steeped in history and hardened expectations. As much as I loved him, I couldn't ignore the truth that our lives had been shaped by forces beyond our control. Yet, even now, beneath the cool night air and the endless stretch of ocean, I felt an almost serene clarity. I had reclaimed what was mine, not with brute force, but with the quiet, calculated authority that comes from knowing your worth. The removal of Beatrice wasn't an act of mere spite. It was the assertion of a new order. It was a declaration that success and family are defined not by ancient pedigrees, but by heart, grit, and vision. As the waves whispered secrets to the shore, I could almost sense that this confrontation was only the beginning. There were unresolved matters lingering in the shadows, hidden agendas, unspoken truths, and the ever-present question of what it truly meant to be real family. And while the past had shaped me, it was the future that I was determined to redefine. In that silent, sandy solitude, I vowed that every challenge, every betrayal, would pave the way for a reckoning that would transform not just my life, but the very fabric of our family. The tide continued its endless dance, and with each retreat, it left behind a promise that nothing, not even the weight of history, could hold me back from building the life I deserved. And as I pressed forward into the night, I carried with me the unyielding determination to see my vision through, even if it meant tearing down the very foundations of the old world to build something new. Morning at Monroe Beach Resort arrived with an unsettling calm. The events of the previous night lingered like a stubborn fog, and the whispers of discontent had already begun to ripple through the halls of my domain. I could sense that every corner of the resort, the quaint bungalows, the sun-bleached cabanas, and even the grand entrance proudly adorned with my name, was watching, waiting for the next move. I found myself in the resort's central courtyard, a place that had once been the heart of joyous gatherings, but now felt charged with tension. The air was heavy with unspoken questions. It wasn't long before the memory of Beatrice's public declaration came flooding back. I recalled the moment vividly, the confident, almost haughty tone in which she had proclaimed, "This house is for real family only." And then, Marcus's equally unfeeling reply, "Honey, just go home." It was as if a switch had been flipped, turning what should have been a day of togetherness into a battlefield of ideals. The reaction among our guests was instantaneous. Some exchanged startled glances, while others murmured among themselves in disbelief. I watched as security, already primed by my earlier command, began herding a small group of disgruntled relatives toward the exit. Their faces contorted into expressions of shock, humiliation, and something akin to defiance, a cocktail of emotions that only deepened the intrigue of the moment. Standing at the center of it all, I felt a mix of righteous satisfaction and a tinge of sadness. The resort I had built was more than just a business. It was an embodiment of my struggles, my victories, and the constant battle against an outdated notion of what family should be. I had reached a point where I could no longer tolerate those who sought to undermine my worth, even if they claimed to be part of the family. As I watched Beatrice being led away by security, I couldn't help but notice the furtive looks exchanged between some guests. Whispers of retribution and justice seemed to circulate beneath the surface. Marcus's face, though impassive on the surface, betrayed a deeper conflict, a silent question of where his loyalties truly lay. It was then that I realized this wasn't just about one woman's harsh words. It was about an entire generation clashing with a new vision of empowerment and self-determination. In that charged moment, I made a decision that would set the course for the rest of the day. I turned to address the remaining guests, my voice steady and resolute. I spoke of how Monroe Beach Resort wasn't merely a physical space, but a symbol of perseverance, a place where every brick and every grain of sand told the story of someone who refused to be diminished by the expectations of others. I reminded everyone that family isn't dictated by blood alone, but by shared values, respect, and the courage to stand up for what is right. Even as I delivered those words, I could feel the undercurrents of change stirring. The look in Marcus's eyes, the cautious nods from longtime employees, and even the uncertain expressions of our guests all hinted at a transformation in the air. The removal of Beatrice had been a catalyst, a spark that ignited old grievances and paved the way for something entirely new. But even as the day advanced, a a question nagged at the back of my mind. Was this dramatic expulsion merely the beginning of a longer, more complicated reckoning? The answer, I suspected, lay in the plans I had meticulously set in motion for what I called the special day. A day that would force every member of this fractured family to confront their true selves. And as I looked out over the resort, my resolve only hardened. Whatever the consequences, I was ready to see this through, no matter how much of the old world had to burn away to make room for the new. In the hours after Beatrice's removal, an eerie hush fell over Monroe Beach Resort. The usual clamor of vacation chatter was replaced by murmurs of disbelief and hushed confessions. I spent the early morning walking the corridors of my resort, feeling the weight of every gaze that fell upon me. There was satisfaction in reclaiming my space, yet the undercurrent of unresolved tension made it impossible to truly relax. Marcus, usually my rock, had grown distant, his eyes clouded with regret. I caught him several times in quiet corners, lost in thought. Each time, I wondered if the cost of asserting my authority was beginning to crack the very foundation of our marriage. His silence, heavy with guilt, only deepened the mystery of his internal struggle, caught between the warm familiarity of his mother's traditions and the stark reality of our new order. As the morning advanced, I was interrupted by an unexpected phone call. The voice on the other end was hushed, almost conspiratorial, a reminder that secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. "You have done well," the caller whispered, their tone both approving and cryptic. The words hung in the air like a promise or a threat. I couldn't discern the identity behind that voice, but the message was clear. I was not alone in my pursuit of redefining what family meant, and there were allies and adversaries in places I hadn't even considered. The staff, ever loyal and discreet, began to share their own snippets of conversation. Javier, one of my most trusted employees, confided in me about long-held rumors swirling among the lower-level workers. They spoke of a secret past, a time when the resort wasn't just a business, but a battleground for power and betrayal. As I listened, I realized that the events of last night were merely the latest act in a drama that had been years in the making. Outside, the ocean's relentless surge mirrored the storm that was gathering inside me. Every crashing wave seemed to echo the rising tension, and every gust of wind carried whispers of dissent. I began to understand that the removal of Beatrice was not a singular act of defiance, but a harbinger of deeper conflicts about to unfold. The question that haunted me now was whether Marcus's wavering loyalty would evolve into outright rebellion, or if it would crumble under the weight of tradition. Throughout the day, I sensed eyes following me, a mix of admiration, suspicion, and pity. Some guests, caught between their own familial allegiances and the unspoken allure of my defiance, watched with bated breath as events continued to unfold. It was as if the resort itself had become a stage, with every brick and every palm tree bearing witness to a drama that was far more than personal vendetta. I found myself pausing in front of the grand lobby, where my name was emblazoned in bold letters. In that moment, I wasn't just defending a business. I was challenging the very idea of who had the right to claim family, who deserved respect, and who could decide the worth of one's labor. The words of the mysterious caller, the murmurs of the staff, and even Marcus's pained silence all converged into a single, resonant truth. Change was inevitable, and those who clung to outdated notions would soon be swept away like sand in the tide. As the afternoon gave way to dusk, the storm clouds gathered, not just in the sky, but in the hearts of everyone at Monroe Beach Resort. I knew that the calm before the storm was fleeting. Beneath the quiet surface lay a maelstrom of secrets, resentments, and the promise of a reckoning that could change everything. And in that charged moment, as the last light of day faded away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real test of our family's strength was still to come. By mid-afternoon, as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, the atmosphere at Monroe Beach Resort had transformed into a labyrinth of hushed conversations and furtive glances. I could almost hear the resort's very palms whispering secrets that had been buried beneath the sands of time. The expulsion of Beatrice and her entourage had not gone unnoticed, and soon the corridors buzzed with rumors that were as salacious as they were true. I found myself in the modest office near the back of the lobby, a room that had witnessed countless triumphs and tragedies over the years. There, Javier, my ever-reliable confidant, leaned in with an intensity that told me he had something important to share. "Rebecca," he murmured, "there's talk among the staff. They say you've been planning something big for today. something that goes beyond mere retribution. His voice was low, almost reverent, as if the mere mention of the plan was enough to set off a chain reaction. I smiled knowingly, my mind racing through the countless details I had orchestrated in secret. The special day I had prepared wasn't just about humbling those who had underestimated me. It was a carefully choreographed event that would expose the hypocrisy of those who claimed to be part of the family while clinging to outdated values. But even as I confirmed Javier's suspicions with a nod, a prickle of unease crept along my spine. I couldn't help but wonder if every whisper in the palms was a portent of things I could no longer control. Before I could delve deeper into the conversation, the door to my office swung open and in walked a stranger, a tall, lean man whose eyes carried the weight of old secrets. His presence was unexpected, and the air seemed to grow heavier as he introduced himself simply as Nathaniel. With a voice that was both smooth and enigmatic, he said, "I believe we share a history, Rebecca. One that you might want to revisit before the day ends." His cryptic words sent a shiver through me, though I quickly masked any sign of vulnerability. After all, every revelation from the past was a potential threat, but also an opportunity. As Nathaniel explained that he once worked for a group of investors who had once tried to buy the resort, I realized that his arrival was more than mere coincidence. His stories hinted at alliances formed long ago, alliances that might now be shifting in unexpected ways. The subtle connection between his past involvement and the recent upheaval raised more questions than answers. Was he here as a friend, a foe, or something in between? And why had he chosen today, the day of reckoning, to reappear? While Nathaniel's revelations danced dangerously close to the heart of the matter, I continued to orchestrate the day's plans with the precision of a seasoned conductor. Every detail, from the carefully curated music to the thematic decor, was designed to expose the true nature of those who would dare to claim that they were real family. Yet, as I moved about the resort, nodding to guests and offering reassuring smiles to my loyal staff, I couldn't shake the feeling that every whispered conversation held an underlying current of rebellion. The murmurs, filled with equal parts admiration and scorn, suggested that the storm of change was nearing its zenith. Nathaniel left as mysteriously as he had arrived, leaving behind more questions than answers. His final words echoed in my mind. Sometimes, the past isn't as dead as we'd like to believe. The thought gnawed at me, and I wondered if this unexpected visit was a sign of things to come, or a desperate attempt by old ghosts to reclaim their power. Even as the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the resort in hues of gold and crimson, I realized that the whispers in the palms were not just rumors. They were the heartbeat of a revolution that challenged the very notion of legacy, family, and the sacrifices we make to claim our own space in the world. I paused at a window overlooking the beach, absorbing the beauty of the moment even as I steeled myself for what lay ahead. Every secret unveiled, every whispered doubt, was a reminder that the day's events were only a prelude to something far larger, a reckoning that would force us all to confront the truth of who we were. And as darkness began to settle in, I vowed that no matter what revelations emerged, I would stand unyielding, determined to write the next chapter of my story on my own terms. The early hours of the day had been a blur of activity as preparations for what I had dubbed the special day reached their final, electrifying crescendo. I moved through Monroe Beach Resort like a general surveying the battlefield. Each detail meticulously arranged, every guest's experience choreographed to reflect the transformation I intended to enforce. Today wasn't merely about humbling those who had doubted me. It was about reclaiming a narrative that had long been marred by outdated family dynamics and unchallenged authority. I found myself in the heart of the main hall, where an ornate banner bearing my name hung proudly, and each table was adorned with subtle yet powerful symbols of renewal and defiance. I could almost taste the anticipation in the air, a heady mix of triumph and reckoning. My mind raced through the countless hours spent planning every minute of this event. Each element, from the carefully selected playlist to the choice of lighting that cast long, dramatic shadows, was designed to peel back the layers of hypocrisy that had cloaked our family for far too long. Marcus lingered at the edges of the preparations, his expression a turbulent blend of guilt, confusion, and a flicker of hope. In rare, quiet moments away from prying eyes, he confessed to me that he felt torn between his ingrained loyalty to his mother and the undeniable magnetism of the new order I was forging. His words, wrapped in quiet desperation, only deepened the complexity of our situation. Was I being too ruthless in my quest for recognition, Or was this the only way to force the truth into the open? As the final touches were being made, my phone rang, a sound that had come to mean both promise and peril. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet distant, layered with an urgency that I hadn't heard in years. "Rebecca," it said, "you must remember that every action has its consequences. There are those who are watching, and they are not pleased." The message was delivered in a hushed tone, as if the speaker feared being overheard. I couldn't discern whether this call was a warning or an affirmation, but it only added to the swirling maelstrom of anticipation and anxiety that now defined the day. That call wasn't the only interruption. As I moved to finalize the guest list and review the program, I discovered that an unexpected addition had been made, a name on the roster I hadn't anticipated. It was a quiet reminder that even the best-laid plans were subject to the unpredictable whims of fate. The delicate balance of order and chaos was shifting, and I knew that every decision I had made today was a step into uncharted territory. I paused for a moment to gather my thoughts, stepping outside to breathe in the salty air and let the ocean's timeless rhythm calm my nerves. Every crashing wave seemed to echo my own heartbeat, a reminder that nature, in all its raw power, was the ultimate arbiter of destiny. I closed my eyes and silently recited a prayer for strength, not out of desperation, but as a ritual of affirmation that I was ready to face whatever the day might bring. In that quiet moment, as I stood alone against the backdrop of a vast, shifting sea, I recognized that the path ahead was as treacherous as it was transformative. The special day wasn't just a celebration. It was a reckoning, a moment when every long-held secret and every suppressed emotion would burst forth like a tidal wave. I had always believed that I was the master of my destiny, but today, even as I orchestrated every detail with precision, I couldn't shake the feeling that forces beyond my control were converging, ready to rewrite the rules of our family drama. Returning to the bustle of the resort, I resolved to embrace every twist and turn that the day might offer. Marcus's lingering doubts, the unexpected phone call, and the newly added guest were all signs that my carefully constructed world was about to be tested in ways I had never imagined. And so, with a mixture of steely determination and the quiet hope that truth would prevail, I pressed forward, ready to confront the coming storm with both plans and prayers in hand. Night fell over Monroe Beach Resort like a velvet curtain, wrapping the day's dramatic events in an air of hushed anticipation. In the dim glow of the lobby's antique chandeliers, I found myself alone for a moment, a rare respite before the storm of the next day. The special day was set to begin at first light, and the tension was almost palpable, crackling in the silence between each carefully orchestrated detail. Marcus had sought me out in a quiet corner of the resort just before midnight. His eyes, usually so composed, shimmered with unspoken remorse and uncertainty. "Rebecca," he began in a low voice, "I need to understand what we're doing here. I know you have your reasons, but I'm scared of what all this might cost us." His vulnerability hit me like a tidal wave, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the weight of the decisions that had led us here. Our whispered conversation, shrouded by the gentle lapping of the ocean waves outside, was both a confession and an appeal, a plea for clarity in a night that promised reckoning. Before I could offer him any comfort or reassurance, a soft knock at the door interrupted us. When I opened it, standing there in the cool midnight air was a figure I hadn't expected, a stranger cloaked in shadows, whose presence carried the quiet intensity of secrets long buried. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," the figure said, voice measured and enigmatic. "I had to come, for reasons that only tonight can reveal." There was something in those words, a promise of revelation that stirred the air with both fear and hope. Marcus and I exchanged glances, our emotions mingling with the uncertainty of this unanticipated visitor. I stepped aside, allowing the figure to enter. In that moment, the entire atmosphere of the resort seemed to hold its breath. Who was this person? What connection did they have to the unfolding drama? Every detail in their demeanor hinted at a story that was intertwined with the very essence of Monroe Beach Resort. In the quiet aftermath of the midnight encounter, I found myself pondering the deeper meaning of our choices. The special day that was set to begin at dawn wasn't simply about reclaiming my space or punishing those who had betrayed me. It was about confronting the demons of our past, the legacy of family that had been so carefully constructed and yet so easily shattered. The figure's unexpected arrival was a stark reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, never truly stays hidden. Marcus's earlier words of fear echoed in my mind as I made my way back to the grand lobby. The night was thick with tension, and every shadow seemed to whisper of the consequences that tomorrow would bring. I knew that in the hours before sunrise, we would all be forced to face the choices we had made. Choices that would forever alter the definition of family for each of us. As I looked out through the large windows at the darkened beach, I couldn't help but feel that the events of tonight were just the calm before an inevitable storm. The mysterious visitor, Marcus's quiet anguish, and the heavy silence that enveloped the resort all pointed toward a reckoning that was as unpredictable as it was inevitable. And so, with the soft promise of dawn looming on the horizon, I steeled myself for the coming day, aware that the truths we had long avoided would soon come crashing into the light. Dawn arrived over Monroe Beach Resort with an ethereal glow that belied the undercurrent of tension and anticipation swirling beneath the surface. Today was not just any day. It was the day I had meticulously planned for, a day that would force every hidden secret and unspoken grievance into the open. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across the ocean and kissed the resort's proud facade, guests began to gather, each arrival laden with a mix of hope, anxiety, and the lingering residue of last night's turmoil. I moved through the crowd with a composed air, greeting each guest with a measured smile that concealed the storm raging inside me. Every detail of the event had been orchestrated to challenge the old order. The banquet hall, decorated with subtle symbols of renewal and defiance, stood as a testament to my journey, a journey that had been forged through hardship, sacrifice, and a relentless pursuit of respect. It was a place where the veneer of polite society was about to be stripped away to reveal raw, unvarnished truths. Marcus, his expression still caught between determination and inner conflict, took his place at my side. I could see the conflict in his eyes, loyalty to a past that was crumbling and a future that was uncertain, yet filled with the promise of change. The moment came when the event's master of ceremonies, a longtime friend who had witnessed the evolution of my struggle, stepped up to the podium. With a voice that resonated across the hall, he declared that today would be a celebration of truth, of courage, and of the family we choose to honor. His words echoed my own sentiments, setting the tone for what was to come. As the ceremony unfolded, the atmosphere shifted from cautious optimism to palpable tension. Family members who had once been silent spectators now found themselves drawn into a confrontation of ideals. Beatrice's absence was as loud as her presence had once been, and the void she left was filled with stares of resentment and whispers of retribution. In the midst of the celebration, Marcus was called upon to make a statement, a public declaration of his loyalties. The weight of that moment pressed upon him, and as he spoke, his voice wavered with both conviction and sorrow. It was a confession of the inner turmoil that had plagued him, a moment of vulnerability that left the assembled guests in stunned silence. Then, as if the universe itself had planned the final twist, a shocking revelation was unveiled. Documents, carefully hidden until this moment, were presented as undeniable evidence of the family's long history of exclusion, favoritism, and betrayal. The revelations rocked the room, leaving many to question everything they had believed about our lineage and the very meaning of real family. Gasps, murmurs, and a few incredulous exclamations filled the hall as old wounds were torn open and re-examined in the harsh light of truth. I stood at the edge of the chaos, feeling both vindicated and pained by the cost of our new beginning. Every secret unearthed was a reminder of the sacrifices made along the way, and every tear shed was a testament to the enduring complexity of human relationships. The special day was no longer just a celebration. It was a reckoning, a moment when the facade of civility gave way to the raw, unfiltered reality of our shared past. As the event reached its crescendo, the tension became almost unbearable. The final twist left everyone questioning. Could these revelations mend the fractured bonds of our family, or were they destined to deepen the divide? In that moment, with the echoes of confessions and revelations lingering in the air, I realized that the true measure of our family was not in the blood that tied us together, but in the courage to confront our own imperfections. And so, as the day wore on and the guests began to disperse into a silence heavy with reflection, I knew that this was not the end. The special day had been only the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised further challenges, further revelations, and a truth that remained tantalizingly out of reach. In the aftermath of the special day, Monroe Beach Resort felt like a husk of its former self, a beautiful, broken shell filled with echoes of shattered dreams and unresolved conflicts. I wandered the quiet corridors, each step resonating like a somber beat in the wake of the revelations. The banquet hall, once filled with triumphant declarations of change, now held only lingering whispers and the heavy silence of a truth too raw to mend immediately. Marcus's struggle was laid bare in every furtive glance and downcast expression. His internal conflict, torn between the old ways embodied by his mother and the new path I had carved out, was evident in the lines of worry etched on his face. It pained me to see him so divided, caught between a duty he had never chosen and the possibility of forging a future built on honesty and mutual respect. I questioned whether my bold actions had, in fact, driven an even deeper wedge between us than I had ever intended. Yet amid the emotional wreckage, subtle signs of resilience began to emerge. A few family members, whose eyes now shone with a mix of regret and newfound understanding, tentatively approached me in the days following the event. Their voices were soft but sincere, offering apologies and seeking forgiveness for years of unspoken prejudice. But for every gesture of reconciliation, there were those who clung stubbornly to the old order, unwilling to admit that our family was capable of change. Adding to the complexity was an unexpected subplot, a whisper of corporate intrigue. I discovered that a secret investor, whose identity had been hidden behind layers of legalese and polite smiles, was now pressing for changes in the resort's management. This investor, it turned out, had ties to some of the very family members who had once scoffed at my achievements. The revelation hinted at a larger game at play, one where business, family, and personal vendettas intermingled in ways that threatened to undermine everything I had fought for. Late one evening, while I was reviewing documents in my office, the sound of a familiar ringtone broke the silence. It was the same voice from the mysterious phone call earlier, a reminder that not all debts were settled with a single act of defiance. The message was cryptic. The past has many layers. Look closer, and you may yet find the truth. I replayed the words over and over, wondering if they were a final warning or a clue to the next stage of this intricate dance of betrayal and redemption. In the mirror of shattered reflections, I saw not only the scars of battles fought, but also the glimmer of a future still possible. A future where the true meaning of family might be redefined not through the echoes of old grudges, but through the hard work of reconciliation and transformation. Even as I questioned the cost of my crusade, I couldn't deny the deep satisfaction that came from finally forcing these hidden truths into the light. As I closed my office that night, the stars overhead seemed to offer silent counsel. The resort, once a beacon of my personal triumph, now stood as both a monument to what had been lost and a promise of what might yet be gained. Every shattered piece, every broken promise, was a step toward a new beginning, a future where the legacy of our family was not measured by the purity of blood, but by the willingness to change and grow. Yet even in these quiet moments of introspection, one burning question remained. Was it all worth the cost? Could the painful process of exposing the past ever truly lead to healing? Or had I, in my quest for respect and power, set in motion a chain of events that would forever divide us? The answer, like so many of life's truths, lay hidden in the interplay of light and shadow, a truth that was still waiting to be fully revealed. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a soft, uncertain glow over Monroe Beach Resort, I stood on the balcony and took in the scene. The aftermath of the special day still resonated in every corner of the resort. The laughter had quieted, the whispers had grown softer, and the storm of emotions had finally begun to subside into an uneasy calm. Yet, amid this ambiguous dawn, the questions lingered like shadows that refused to be banished by the morning light. I addressed the remaining guests one final time in the grand courtyard, my voice steady and yet imbued with the quiet sorrow of what had transpired. Today, I said, we have witnessed the unraveling of old myths, the exposure of hidden truths, and the painful rebirth of our family. But know this, the journey does not end here. We must all decide what kind of family we wish to be. My words echoed through the silent space, leaving each listener to grapple with their own convictions. Marcus stood beside me, his eyes a mirror of the conflict that had defined these past few days. His public declaration had revealed more than just his loyalties. It had uncovered his deepest fears and his long-suppressed desire for change. And yet, even as he appeared resolute, I could see in his gaze the lingering doubt of a man caught between two worlds. The investor's subtle meddling, The whispers of corporate intrigue and the remnants of old alliances all mingled with the personal heartbreak and triumph that marked our collective journey. I realized that my actions, calling security, expelling those who clung to outdated traditions, and orchestrating a day of reckoning, had irrevocably altered the landscape of our family. Was it right? Or had I crossed a line that, once blurred, would never allow us to return to what once was? I left those questions deliberately unanswered. In a final, candid moment, I turned to face you, dear listener, as if looking directly into your soul. What does family mean to you? I asked softly, inviting your judgment, your support, or your condemnation. Is it defined by blood, by shared memories, or by the willingness to fight for one's own truth? The question hung in the air, a challenge and an invitation to reflect on the nature of loyalty, love, and power. As the sun's rays slowly lifted the veil of night, I couldn't help but feel that this ambiguous dawn was both an ending and a beginning, a fragile moment when the past, present, and future converged in uncertainty. My name, emblazoned on every building of this resort, was no longer just a mark of personal triumph. It was a symbol of transformation, a testament to the cost of fighting for one's place in the world. And so, as I watched the light stretch across the horizon and the ocean shimmer with the promise of a new day, I embraced the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The future was as unwritten as the whispers that still danced among the palms, a future that might heal or further divide us, depending on the choices we made. In that fragile moment, I accepted that some questions were meant to linger, that not every conflict was meant to have a neat resolution. The morning air was cool and refreshing as I stepped back inside, leaving you with a final, lingering thought. In the battle between old loyalties and new beginnings, who really has the right to define what it means to be real family? That, perhaps, is the mystery that will keep us all awake as the days unfold. An ambiguity that I, too, must live with as I continue to forge my path in a world that is ever-changing, unpredictable, and beautifully uncertain. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the highs and lows of Monroe Beach Resort, where every wave of the ocean and every whisper of the palms tells a story of power, betrayal, and the undying search for true belonging. I invite you to share your thoughts, your own experiences, and even your questions in the comments. After all, in the end, the definition of real family is a conversation we must all continue to have.